Good morning, beautiful family. It is Father's Day, and the topic today is mindful speech. Mindful speech is the theme of the day, as a part of now the third part of our series that we're doing on mindfulness for Mavericks. And I mentioned to you that last month I had sent out notice to many of my friends who I identify as mavericks and spiritual movers and shakers in the world, inviting them to be part of this dialogue and to connect and share. And we have such a beautiful opportunity now with most of us doing church from home or using our sanctuaries as studios, that we can be in different places at the same time. So people on the West Coast can tune in, but it's also true for speakers and for ministers as well. So this morning, for example, on Friday, I recorded an interview with my friend, Reverend Stephen Rambo at the Simi Valley Center for Spiritual Living in Simi Valley, California. He'll be airing that today, so I'm part of their service today. Reverend Kevin Ross is using another part of an interview that he's used for the last couple of weeks, a panel that we did as part of his service today. So I'm in three different churches today, right? All virtually. It's really amazing. And my friends Lola and Kevin Ross are scheduled. Lola has already been here, and Kevin Ross will be here next week. Can do so and still participate in their own services in their time zone. And today was supposed to be similar. My friend, co-collaborator and leader on the Association for Global New Thought Leadership Council, the Rev Deborah Johnson. She's the senior minister and founder of Inner Light Ministries in Santa Cruz. She's on the board of leaders for the Pachamama Foundation. Just an amazing spirit, a bold and strong voice for social justice, and does wonderful trainings and consultation all over the world. And she was scheduled today to deliver the message, Mindful Speech, as the third part of our series. We have not been successful in getting her online. Perhaps she has confused the time zone change. We're not exactly sure yet. We're trying to track that down in the background. But in meanwhile, here I am, and here we are. Now, here's the thing. We're talking about mindful speech. This is all going to come together so beautifully, as Spirit always does. So I'm on the fly this morning. As we didn't have the connection with her, I pulled up some Father's Day notes from sermons past. It's one of the benefits of being in ministry for 15, 16 years. I've done a few Father's Day messages, but here's the thing: this year or this weekend, I gave myself the true gift of Father's Day. I got a new grill on the deck, a smoker, and we've been using it all weekend long. And my stepdad is here, and my mother is here, and so I've spent a few days just really taking time off and being with them. And so I didn't do anything really. I'm confessing to you, I didn't do anything to prepare for today. In the case of a backup, you always kind of have a backup in mind. You always have a minister in the field in case you get sick at the last minute, a minister or practitioner. Baji Daniels may recall, or you may recall, Baji Daniels having to step in for me when I wasn't feeling well on a Saturday. So you always have that 11th hour back pocket person and or a speech or message in your arena. And this weekend, I just said, you know what? It's Father's Day. I'm just going to take it all in. And Reverend Deborah Johnson is one of my favorite people, and can't wait to take notes from her and learn from her. And I got nothing to do but sit back and enjoy it. And as life would have it, we can't get her online this morning, and so here I am. So let's dive in and talk about this. Asizwe, I'm going to put you on notice. I may bring you back into the broadcast. I hope you're still in the waiting room. And reason so is because you are a single mother, and Father's Day is related to single mothers as well. I grew up with a single mother most of my life until latter part of high school, till my high school years. And so I always honor the single mothers on Father's Day, and I want to talk about that as well. Let's start here. mindful speech and what is the energy of fatherhood, what is coming to me is that as a father, I am one of the parts of the roles of fatherhood is always trying to figure out the right thing to say, right? What do I say? What do I say to my sons? What do I say to my children? What do I say to those who look to me? What do I say? And how do I find the right words? And to deepen into a spiritual practice of choosing mindful words, because sometimes, and maybe some of us have had experiences with our father where our father did not choose the right words, right? And did not follow that up with the right actions. And so fatherhood at its core is about mindful speech, finding the right words. Usually I share a prayer on Father's Day to bless all the many facets of fatherhood. And so I'm going to share that with you now. I'm just going to invite you to take a breath and think of whatever relationship you have. As I have shared, I did not grow up with my birth father, and my stepdad, who's with us now, didn't come into my life until I was about 14, 15 years old. And so majority of that critical shaping and rearing ages. And so when my stepfather came in, we were best friends. We became best friends in high school. We would run together. We would, but it wasn't necessarily a father relationship as much as it was a friendship and partnership in the family that we were creating. I realized years later what a model he was for me of divine masculine and fatherhood, but it wasn't in the moment rearing. You understand? And so all of us have a different spectrum and perspective of what fatherhood is. And so into that space, I want to simply offer this prayer. This prayer is written by Kirk Lodeman. Let us praise those fathers who have striven to balance the demands of work, marriage, and children with an honest awareness of both joy and sacrifice. Let us praise those fathers who, lacking a good model for a father, have worked to become a good father. Let us praise those fathers who, by their own accounts, were not always there for their children, but who continue to offer those children, now grown, their love, their support. Let us pray for those fathers who have been wounded by the neglect and hostility of their children. Let us praise those fathers who, despite divorce, have remained in their children's lives. Let us praise those fathers whose children are adopted and whose love and support has offered healing. Let us praise those fathers who, as stepfathers, freely choose the obligation of fatherhood and earn their stepchildren's love and respect. Let us praise those fathers who have lost a child to death and continue to hold their children in their heart. And let us praise those men who have no children, but cherish the next generation as their own. Let us praise those men who have fathered us in their role as mentors and guides and teachers. And let us praise those men who are about to become fathers. May they openly delight in their new journey. And let us praise those fathers who have died but live on in memory and whose love continues to nurture us. And so it is. And so it is into that wide spectrum of fatherhood, all of the ways that it shows up, and including those single mothers, that we seek to explore the topic today of mindful speech, what it is. I have my two sons, And many of you know that William is my first child, um, firstborn child. It's important to articulate the difference. And so I have this unique experience of sort of experiencing fatherhood from the infancy, from the pregnancy and the birth, of all of the different ways that that shows up, the rearing of the child as my firstborn. But before that, I have my 15-year-old who I refer to as my chosen child, my chosen son. Josh is my chosen son because he is my wife's firstborn. And because I chose her, I chose him. And having a 15-year-old and a 3-year-old at the same time is a special kind of blessing and challenge on a daily basis of always trying to find the right words, the right temperament, the right response. I want to see if I can play for you something. I'm going to do a screen share here, and then I'm going to share some more thoughts, and then I'm going to ask Asizwe if she's still on to do split screen with me. I'm saying that in advance so that she can think a little bit, not throw her completely on the spot, but have a dialogue with me about single motherhood and raising children as well. But first, I want to find, I think I have it here, this video from, was posted by The Atlantic, and it's specifically about raising young Black men in America today. So let's see if I can get this shared. It is shared. Okay, good. That's great.
You learn a lot about America on its country roads. My earliest lessons came from driving through the South with my father. With mouths full of sunflower seeds, we talked about the things that made us Southern, Black, and whole. But life ain't always beautiful, and I learned that too. One hot summer afternoon, a man with a Confederate flag license plate ran us off the road. As we pulled up to a nearby gas station, just there in front of our car was Mr. Confederate Plate himself, leaning like all villains do against the side of his car. I remember the shouting match, and Mr. Confederate Flag calling my father the one name he would never answer to, looking at me and saying the same, and then gesturing that he had a gun in the car. I remember noticing similar flags on another truck and inside the gas station, and knowing instinctively that we were not in friendly territory. Van Newkirk Sr. looked my way and said something that's always stuck with me. This is who we are. Don't forget. These words often come to me. When I first heard about Tamir Rice's death at the hands of police officers, when people questioned with straight faces if our president was born in America, when a man who was endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan had characterized Mexican immigrants as rapists and has promoted stop and frisk, was elected president. Donald Trump won this election by appealing to white voters and running an unabashed campaign of bigotry, racism, and xenophobia. This is the same America that killed Emmett Till and the same place that gave us Jim Crow. My wife and I are expecting a child sometime in April, and I'm left thinking about how what's happening will affect his life. One day I'm going to look that boy in the eye and have to explain the same thing my father did to me and his grandfather to him. This is who we are. I know now that the wisdom of Black fatherhood comes with a burden of sorrow. But what I also know is that America is more than the things I fear. When I remember my tears for Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown, I also remember the young Black protesters who traveled thousands of miles in buses and cramped cars to protest in clouds of tear gas. I think about the fact that the popular vote of this election belongs to one of the most diverse coalitions of voters in American history. That's not nothing. I still have hope that with enough work and elbow grease, my child, descended from slaves, slave masters, immigrants, and natives, will find a way to live outside the veil. This is who we are. It occurs to me now that his phrase was both a warning and salvation.
Yeah, this is who we are. This is the complexities of fatherhood in America today, particularly as it intersects with racism in America today. You know, Rumi has a beautiful quote that I like to use on Father's Day. It says this: God comes to you in whatever image you have been able to form of him. The wiser and broader and more generous the image, the more grace and power that can flow from the throne into your heart. God is saying, be careful then, my servants. Purify and attune and expand your thoughts about me, for they are my house. God comes to you in whatever image you have been able to form of him. The wiser, the broader, the more generous the image, the more grace and power can flow from the throne into your heart. God is saying, be very careful then, my servants, and purify and attune and expand your thoughts about me, for they are my house. The image that we hold of God is the house that we create for the presence of God, which is so often associated with this notion of Father. But what we spiritually know here at part of SLCA and New Thought Theology is that God is both masculine and feminine. It's non-binary. It's the infinite intelligence of the universe. It is the entire spectrum. And yet we are in this cultural dynamic that so often attributes fatherhood with godliness or God with the Father image. But let us be aware that we are practicing a spiritual tradition that has as its teaching symbol a circle. It has no beginning and no end, and that can be examined through the three layers: Spirit, or the Father; the soul, which is the Divine Mother or the creative medium; and then the body, the expression of that. And so in that is inclusive of, again, the entire spectrum: fatherhood, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and the birthing process and creation that comes out of that. And it is that expanded notion, that expanded idea about what fatherhood is. Be very careful, expand, purify your thoughts about me, for they are my house. This is what I believe Jesus is getting at least in part, when he shares this with his disciples. It says, I believe this comes from Matthew. It says, while he was speaking to the crowds, behold, his mother and brothers were standing outside to speak to him. And someone said to him, behold, your mother and brothers are standing outside to speak with you. But Jesus answered to the one who was telling him and said, who is my mother and who are my brothers? And stretching out his hands towards his disciples, he said, behold, my mother and brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father who is in heaven, he is my brother and sister and mother. I believe this passage is about expanding that notion of not just fatherhood, but also communal and family relations, right? Whoever does the will, what is the will of the divine intelligence of the universe, right? The divine intelligence, which is that spirit. In our teaching symbol, the circle, we say, instead of spirit, we'll sometimes say seed. And it's in the creative medium, this creative soil, we will say the soil, right, which is the divine feminine, The seed, the soil receives the seed, and then the byproduct, the body, right? What is the intention or the will of the seed except to bring forth the nature of the seed? And it does so by combining with and merging with the soil such that a creative law is set into motion. And so the will of the Father, to use that language, the will of the Father is to represent it, right? To understand the creative capacity that we have as agents of God's love, to be manifestations that build the kingdom. You see, to me, father, to be a father, the word father to me is a verb. Father, fatherhood is a verb. It's about taking responsibility for something. If I initiate the creative process, you know this because I say it comes in to almost every sermon, right? Whatever we create, we are in relationship with, right? So if I create and I'm in relationship with the thing that I create, then to claim fatherhood is to claim responsibility for what I've created, you see. And what we're seeing right now in the collective consciousness of America is a rising up in which we must take a greater collective responsibility for the conditions and circumstances and ways in which we have created this world that we live in. It is said that we cannot hide from the hard truths about race and justice in America, that we have to name them in order to change them. For now, Brene Brown, and then I'm going to share just a few more things, and then I think I'm going to bring in Ossie. I keep saying that, and I don't have a message from Shannon or any indication that that's not a good idea or not possible. But okay, there it is. The message says, yes, you are. Okay, good. Brene Brown says this. I love this. This will be a great setup, I think, here. She says, when we deny the story, it defines us. Think about that for a moment. When we deny the story, it defines us. When we own the story, we can write a brave new ending. When we deny the story defines us. But when we own the story, we can write a brave new ending. When I was denying the story that my birth father was not around, it defined me. It placed me in a particular box. It shaped my thoughts. I would deny it and try to pretend it wasn't there, and tried to pretend it didn't hurt me, and tried to pretend that it didn't shape me. And yet that limited story was defining me. But the moment that I owned the story and said, yes, this is the blessing, this is the circumstance, this is what I was given. You see, then I could write a new story, and I could become the man that I was destined to become. It was no accident that my first child was a son. You see, my wife and I wanted a baby girl because we had Josh. And I was in Josh's life since about 9 years old, and so we thought, I'm helping raise a boy, and we've got that down, and I just, baby girls are just so sweet, and so there was just something in our spirits that we were like, yeah, we're gonna have a baby girl. And we kept thinking about it and praying about it, and kind of requesting it from the universe. And when we got that sonogram, and when we found out that it was a boy, there was something that ran through me that was so deep and ancient and primal that I knew exactly what was happening. You see, my father wasn't there for me, and his father wasn't there for him. My father was raised in foster homes and was actually sexually abused in those foster homes. So his father wasn't there for him. And from what I can gather, his father, the father of my grandfather on my father's side was also not there for him. So there was a cycle that had repeated itself. There was a pattern that had repeated itself. And as long as cosmically we denied that story, it would define us. But when we owned that story, we could write a brave new ending. It is my task and responsibility to write a brave new ending for what fatherhood looks like in the lineage of my own blood. You see, that's my responsibility to write a brave new ending. I knew exactly what Spirit was doing when that sonogram came back and said it was a boy. This was an opportunity to heal and transform my own lineage, my own story. We're at the same place with America. The lineage that we have around supremacy, white supremacy, and racism, and white privilege. We have the opportunity to write a brave new story, but only when we own it and say, this is the deal, this is the issue, this is the problem, this is the story that we currently have. Things are not working, things are broken. Call it what it is, you see. The power of ownership, which is why I love the 12 steps for 12 steps of recovery from white conditioning, right? Modeling the 12-step program. Step 1, we have a problem and our lives have become unmanageable. That's ownership. Become an owner and of naming it so that we can write a brave new beginning. And that brave new beginning comes in step 2 when we say, and we come to believe that a power greater than us can restore us to sanity. Let me bring in Asizwe and see what Spirit has moved for her about making a choice to raise children as a single mother, which is no small task.
Absolutely. And I'm in the kitchen now, so I'm in a new scenario, and Zola may run by for a snack. But I just want to thank you so much, Reverend Alexander. Our relationship actually begins in the story of my parenthood as a practitioner student. You were such an important guest speaker to our cohort for me because you were able to help me to talk about spiritual leadership while parenting or through parenting. And I was like maybe 1 year in of parenting, maybe a couple months, and I was shell shocked. And you helped me kind of put it together. And just to have a minister that can even speak to listening to Paw Patrol and having that song stuck in your head on a Sunday sermon gives us a very special bond.
You got it rolling right now.
I did, on a roll. So yes, I just am grateful for you and for our relationship in spirit and in parenthood. And our boys are similar in age, about a couple months apart. And I think just the opportunity to talk about my journey as a lesbian solo mom by choice is a very unique thing to be doing today, and a beautiful opportunity. And I think that my narrative around parenting is a great opportunity for mindful speech today. And I recognize that we have real hurts and we have real healing that come up when we get to Father's Day and Mother's Day, and all our stuff can come on up, and it should, because it's opportunity to release and process and work. It's very much a tense day for solo moms and single mothers, and the tension of, do I get the credit? Who gets the credit? I am out of mama and a daddy, and that is not my narrative per se. When I was in grad school, I remember reading Bell Hooks, The Will to Change, and We Real Cool. And I created a vision that I didn't know would be my vision of parenting, which is simply that children need loving men and women all around them. Biological, adopted, step, it doesn't matter. They need loving men and women, healthy men and women all around them. Mama and daddy that birthed us, they got us here. We couldn't get here without them. You couldn't get here without that father, and we are grateful for it. You couldn't get here without that father. I couldn't get here without my father. But for us to be healthy, we need lots of loving men and women. And I'm so grateful to say that I am able to raise Zola in a community of so many loving men and women, strong women and powerful men. And in every community I'm in, he gets to stand at the feet of nurturers to then decide and shape the kind of man he's going to be in the world. That was my vision. My birth story was similar to yours in that I was hoping for a girl. I said, oh, I don't care. Just give me a spunky child. It doesn't matter. And when I got, they mistakenly told me the child's gender, I was going to wait. And it was not a girl. I got a letter that said, the sex is a boy. And I was like, you know, and I was like, well, we're going to have lots of fun. And God has given me the opportunity to make an excellent man in this world. And boy, is he spunky. Boy, is he spunky. But he's also spunky because he's surrounded by so many men. My dad, his Papa Koo, my mom's husband, my stepdad, Papa Clarence, our loving donor and spiritual father, Mombe, who even helped us to begin planting and gardening in our yard. And so really when we think about Father's Day, when we think about the spirit of the Father, it really is about that choice to be healthy and to be healthy for our children.
Yes. Amen. Well, thank you so much for your presence again in our community, your prayer today. And when we were backstage before the broadcast started, for all of you watching, we were unable to connect with Rev Deborah Johnson. She just, in that practitioner way, I could hear her. She was praying and she said, we're not going to leave you hanging. We got you. And so the wheels started turning and I said, well, I need to bring her on to fulfill that promise. So thank you so much. I'll let you go now so you can get back to Zola and have a beautiful Father's Day and wonderful weekend with him. And we'll wrap this up in just a few moments.
All right. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you. And so let's just close this out with a few more thoughts about what it is as I'm inviting you today through mindful speech to own your own story. Remember, as you own your story, you can write a brave new beginning. As long as you're denying some part of who you are or how you came to be in this world or who was around you or who wasn't around you and whose fault that is or what they did or did not do or anything like that. And that story limits and defines you. You get to be the author the moment you take responsibility. Father is a verb, to be responsible. Just look at the first few lines of the Bible. You have to get to about line 3, right? Verse 3, where it finally says, and then God said, right? In the beginning was the void. In the beginning was heaven. In the beginning. And then God, out of the void, God said. Just stop right there as you contemplate that line and ask yourself, who's writing the story? Because you see, just the first few lines of the Bible, so rich because it tells us that God doesn't even have a voice. Oof. God doesn't even have a voice until the author gives him a voice. Until the author gives the divine presence and says, this is what the divine presence is saying. But who decided what the divine presence was saying? The person on the other side of the pen, the pencil, the quill, the hammer and chisel, whatever they were using, right? The person on the other side, the author. You get to be the author of your story. You get to be the father, the responsible agent of creation for a story that is yours and that is powerful. And we collectively get to be fathers of a new story for America. Fathers of a story of change and transformation. Fathers of a story of justice and peace. Fathers of a story that take responsibility for the mistakes that have been made, for the wrongs that have been done, for those that have been hurt, and set to make it right. The most responsible thing I can do and demonstrate and model for my boys is to not only be mindful of my own speech, but when I know that something has gone off, something has gone wrong, hurt has been done, the most important thing that I can do is take responsibility and set to make it right. Let's be fathers of a world that works for everyone. Let's be those who acknowledge the hurt and pain that has happened in the world and set to make it right with our actions and with our words. I love you all. We will continue to communicate with Reverend Deborah Johnson. In this moment, we pray and know that all is well in her world, whatever is happening, and that perhaps it was as simple as a glitch of time zone confusion, and that it is nothing more than that. And we will hope to connect with her, and I'll bring her on for after the sermon on Wednesday night if she's available, and I'll just make her talk the whole time. That'll be her penance. No, I'm just teasing. We'll dialogue together if she's available on Wednesday night for the after the sermon, and it'll be a really good time. I want you to hear her voice. In the meantime, I know that today was the right words, the right speech, the mindful speech, the right things at the right time for those of you listening. And I'm so grateful to Asiswe for stepping in and for spirit guiding this entire thing. I love you all. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Let's do our grateful giving. I am so deeply, 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 deeply grateful as a father, as a minister who makes my living doing this, and I get to support my children and support my family because you support this community. So on this Father's Day, I ask that you just hold the creation of this spiritual community and the intentionality of this spiritual community in your heart as you either think about the gift that you have already given through automatic giving, if that's the case for you, or if you choose to give in PayPal or an intentional way in this service this morning. Please do so with that in mind, that you are helping create an environment that is providing that place of mindfulness and strong men and role models and father figures for those children in our community when they see us on Sundays, and is providing an atmosphere of spiritual consciousness and education where we're all rising up. We have the Mankind Project and a number of our men that are engaged in that work, and that is a healing, transformative consciousness that is taking place on the planet that many of the men in our community are engaged in. We are doing good work here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, and you contribute and help make that possible through the gift that you give right now in this moment. So all that's coming in through the mail, all that's coming in through PayPal, all that's coming in through Text-a-Tithe, all that's set up automatically to come in, we bless it now with this affirmation. I live in a universe of abundance. As I freely and joyfully give, I join in the divine flow, and all that I share with life returns to be multiplied abundantly. And so it is. So it is.